I never thought I'd be that woman, the one who cheats and then acts like the victim. But here I am. Amber, 34, and apparently I'm the villain in my own marriage story. Grant and I met at a friend's birthday party. He was quiet, steady, with these kind eyes that seemed to notice everything. I was drawn to that stability. My own family life had been chaotic parents who fought constantly, a father who disappeared for months at a time. Grant represented everything I thought I wanted. Safe, predictable, reliable. We married after 2 years of dating. I was 27. He was 29. Looking back, maybe I was too young. Everyone around me was settling down, buying houses, having babies. I didn't want to be left behind. The first few years were fine. Good. Even Grant worked in finance. Something with numbers and spreadsheets that made my eyes glaze over when he talked about it. I did marketing for a local chain of stores. We bought a modest house in the suburbs. We hosted dinner parties, took vacations, built what looked like a perfect life. But something was missing. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Grant was kind, attentive, but he wasn't exciting. Our sex life was adequate, but not passionate. Our conversations revolved around household chores, work stress, weekend plans. I started feeling restless, like I was playing a part in a life that didn't quite fit. That's when Derek entered the picture. He worked with a vendor my company used, and we met at a conference downtown. Unlike Grant, Derek was charismatic, funny, and paid me the kind of attention I'd been craving. He noticed my new haircut, remembered details about my life, made me feel seen in ways Grant hadn't in years. "You're wasted in that job," Derek told me over drinks at the conference. "You should be running your own agency. You have that spark." I glowed. Grant never talked like that. His compliments were practical. "That's a nice dress," or "Dinner was good tonight." Derek made me feel brilliant, beautiful, special. We started texting, innocent at first, work-related things that gradually became more personal. He'd send me articles he thought I'd find interesting. I'd share funny stories from my day. It felt harmless. Really, just a friendship that made me feel alive again. Grant noticed something was different. "Of course. He's not stupid. You seem happier lately," he said one night as we were getting ready for bed. "I guess I am," I replied, not meeting his eyes. "Work's going well." "You're on your phone a lot," he observed, his tone neutral. "Just keeping up with emails," I said, which wasn't exactly a lie. Derek and I met for coffee to discuss a potential project. That was the first time we crossed the line. We sat in a corner booth, knees touching under the table. The conversation turned personal, then flirty. Then his hand was on mine and I didn't pull away. "You deserve so much more than you have," he whispered, and I believed him. That night, Grant tried to initiate sex. I went through the motions, my mind elsewhere. When he held me afterward, I felt nothing but irritation. His touch felt familiar in the worst way, comfortable but uninspired. The affair escalated quickly. Derek and I were meeting weekly, then twice a week. I started working late, inventing projects and deadlines. Grant never questioned me. That's the thing about him, he trusts too easily. Assumes everyone has good intentions like he does. I justified everything to myself. Grant wasn't meeting my emotional needs. I deserved to feel desired, appreciated. I wasn't hurting anyone. It was just a temporary escape from the mundane reality of my life. Looking back, I should have known it would blow up. Affairs always do. But I was caught up in the excitement, the secrecy, the feeling of being wanted. The discovery happened on a Tuesday. I left my phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while I went to take a shower. When I came out, Grant was sitting at the table, my phone in front of him. His face was pale, his hands shaking slightly. "What is this, Amber?" he asked, his voice quiet. I froze. My mind raced, searching for an explanation, a denial, anything that might get me out of this situation. "It's not what it looks like," I said, the cliché falling from my lips even as I knew how pathetic it sounded. "So you're not having an affair with Derek?" Grant asked, his eyes fixed on me. "These texts, these meeting arrangements, they're all fake." I felt a surge of anger. How dare he go through my phone, How dare he confront me like this? You had no right to look at my private messages. I shot back, deflecting, attacking. I had no right. Grant stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. I'm your husband. You've been lying to me, sneaking around. And I'm the one in the wrong. His voice rose, something I rarely heard. Grant was usually so controlled, so measured. This is exactly what I'm talking about, I said, crossing my arms. You never trust me. You always assume the worst. The worst. Grant laughed. A harsh sound I'd never heard from him before. Amber, I have proof. Right here, in black and white. How can you possibly deny this? I switched tactics. Tears welled in my eyes, not genuine regret, but a weapon I'd used before. I'm lonely. Grant, I whispered, letting my voice tremble. You're never really present. You work late. You come home tired. You barely notice me anymore. He stared at me, disbelief etched on his face. So you cheat on me, and it's my fault, he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I didn't say that, I replied, backing away slightly. I'm just trying to explain how this happened. How this happened. Grant shook his head. No, Amber. This didn't happen. You made choices. A series of choices that led you to betray me. To betray our marriage. The word betray stung. It felt so dramatic. So unfair. I wasn't a villain. I was just a woman trying to find happiness. I think you should leave, I said, surprising myself with the words. Grant looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I should. He packed a bag that night, taking only what he needed for a few days. As he walked out the door, I felt a mix of relief and panic. Relief that the confrontation was over. Panic at what came next. The first few days were strange. The house felt too quiet, too empty. I called Derek, expecting him to comfort me, to reassure me that I'd done the right thing. I need some space, he said when I suggested we meet up. This is complicated, Amber. I didn't sign up for all this drama. I stared at my phone, stunned. This wasn't part of the plan. Derek was supposed to be my escape route, my fresh start. What do you mean? I asked, my voice tight. I mean you're still married, Derek said, his tone impatient. I thought this was just fun, but now you're talking about leaving him, and it's getting messy. Messy, I repeated, my anger rising. You pursued me. You told me I deserved better. I was being nice, Derek replied. I didn't think you'd actually leave your husband over it. The call ended shortly after, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the echoing silence of the house. A week passed. Grant texted once to ask if we could talk. I agreed, mostly because I needed to know what he was thinking. We met at a neutral coffee shop, the awkwardness between us palpable. I've been staying with Mark, Grant said, naming a friend from college. I think we need to figure out what comes next. I nodded, waiting. I love you, Amber, he continued, his voice steady. But I can't be married to someone who doesn't respect me, who lies to me, who betrays my trust. I never meant to hurt you, I said, which was technically true. I hadn't set out to cause him pain. But you did, Grant replied. And what's worse, you're not taking any responsibility for it. You're blaming me. You're making excuses. I felt defensive again. Why was he making this so difficult? People make mistakes. Grant, I said, can't we just move past this? Move past it. He shook his head. Amber, you had an affair. That's not a mistake like forgetting to pick up milk. That's a fundamental breach of our marriage vows. Vows are just words, I snapped, then immediately regretted it when I saw the hurt flash across his face. Maybe they are to you, Grant said quietly. They weren't to me. We talked in circles for an hour, making no progress. Grant wanted me to acknowledge what I'd done, to take responsibility, to commit to working on our marriage. I wanted him to forgive me and move on, to stop making me feel bad about something that wasn't entirely my fault. In the end, we agreed to a trial separation, 30 days to figure out what we wanted. The first week of the separation was liberating. I came and went as I pleased. Didn't have to answer to anyone. Ate cereal for dinner if I wanted to. I called Derek again, but he didn't respond. I told myself he was just busy, that he'd come around. By the second week, the loneliness set in. Our friends had taken sides, mostly Grant's. My invitations dried up. Weekends, once filled with dinner parties and game nights, were now empty stretches of time I struggled to fill. I tried reaching out to Grant, suggesting we meet for dinner. "I think we should stick to the 30 days, he said when I called. "We both need space to think." "What is there to think about?" I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. "We either work this out or we don't. It's not that simple." "Amber?" he replied. "Not for me." Anyway, the third week brought financial reality. Grant had always handled the bills, the investments, the long-term planning. I'd contributed my salary, of course, but I'd never paid attention to the details. Now, as I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by statements and notices, I realized how little I understood about our financial situation. I called Grant. My pride swallowed for the moment. "I don't understand these bills," I admitted. "Can you help me figure out what needs to be paid?" There was a pause on the other end. "I can transfer money to cover the essentials, Grant said finally. "But Amber, you need to learn to manage this yourself. Whatever happens with us, you need to be able to stand on your own financially." His practical tone irritated me. Here I was, reaching out for help, and he was giving me a life lesson. "I'm not an idiot." "Grant," I snapped. "I just need some help right now." "I know you're not," he said, his patience infuriating. "That's why I'm going to help you learn, not just do it for you." We spent an hour on the phone, Grant walking me through our finances. As we talked, I realized how much he'd been shielding me from the stress of the mortgage, the retirement planning, the insurance decisions. I'd been content to let him handle it all, focusing on my career, my social life, my own happiness. By the fourth week, I was desperate. Derek still hadn't returned my calls. My friends were distant. The house felt like a prison. I missed Grant, his presence, his stability, the way he made me feel safe. When we met again to discuss the separation, I was ready to beg if necessary. "I've made a mistake," I said, the words tasting foreign in my mouth. "I want to work things out." Grant looked at me, his expression unreadable. "What's changed, Amber?" he asked. "Besides Derek not returning your calls." I flushed, angry that he knew, angrier that he was, right? "I've had time to think," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I realize what I had with you, what I threw away." "I appreciate you saying that," Grant replied. "But I need more than words. I need to know that you understand what you did, why it was wrong, and that you're committed to changing." "I understand," I said, though I didn't really, not the way he meant it. "Do you?" Grant leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Because it seems to me that you're sorry you got caught. Sorry that Derek didn't want you. Sorry that you're lonely now. But I haven't heard you say you're sorry for betraying me, for lying to me, for breaking our marriage?" The words hung between us, sharp and undeniable. "I'm sorry," I said, forcing the words out. "I'm sorry for hurting you, but not for the affair itself," Grant observed. "Not for the choices you made." I felt a surge of frustration. Why couldn't he just accept my apology and move on? Why did he have to dissect everything, analyze my motives, make me feel worse than I already did? "What do you want from me, Grant?" I asked, my voice rising. "Do you want me to grovel? To beg for forgiveness? To spend the rest of my life making this up to you?" "I want you to take responsibility," he said calmly. "I want you to acknowledge that you made a choice to cheat, that it wasn't my fault, that it wasn't because you were lonely or unhappy. You made a choice, Amber, a series of choices, and until you can own that, we can't move forward." I stared at him, realizing that this was a line I couldn't cross. To fully admit what I'd done, to take complete responsibility, would mean acknowledging that I was the villain in this story, that I had destroyed my marriage, hurt a good man, all because I was selfish and dissatisfied. "I can't do that," I said finally. "Not the way you want me to." Grant nodded, as if he'd expected this. "Then I think we know where we stand," he said. The divorce was as amicable as such things can be. Grant didn't fight me on assets, didn't try to punish me financially. He just wanted out. A clean break. I moved to a small apartment in the city. unable to afford the house on my own. The silence there was different from the silence in the house, less oppressive, but lonelier. Derek resurfaced a few months after the divorce was final. He sent a text. Heard about the divorce? Sorry to hear that. Drinks sometime. I should have ignored him. I knew I should, but the loneliness was a physical ache, and the thought of seeing someone familiar, someone who had once desired me, was too tempting to resist. We met at a quiet bar downtown. Derek was charming as ever, attentive, asking about my life, my work. You seem good, he said, studying me. I'm adjusting, I replied, not wanting to admit how difficult it had been. Grant was always too boring for you, Derek said, echoing my own thoughts from months ago. You need someone who understands your fire. I smiled, warmed by his words. Maybe he was right. Maybe Grant and I were never meant to be, and this was all for the best. We started seeing each other casually. Derek was fun, exciting, exactly what I thought I wanted. But as time went on, I noticed things. The way his eyes would wander when a pretty woman walked by. The way he'd check his phone constantly during dinner. The way he'd disappear for days without explanation. 6 months into our relationship, I discovered Derek was seeing someone else. Not just seeing seriously dating, talking about a future together. When I confronted him, he shrugged. I never said we were exclusive, he said. We were just having fun. The words struck me like a physical blow. This was what I had left my marriage for. This was the better I thought I deserved. I ended things with Derek that day, cutting him out of my life completely. No drama, no scenes, just silence. A year after my divorce was final, I ran into Grant at a mutual friend's holiday party. He looked good, happy, relaxed, standing with a woman I didn't recognize. They made a handsome couple, comfortable in each other's presence. I watched them from across the room, a bitter taste in my mouth. Grant had moved on, found someone else. Meanwhile, I was alone, still living in the same small apartment, still struggling to understand how everything had fallen apart. When our eyes met across the room, Grant gave me a polite nod, then turned back to his date. No animosity, no anger, just indifference. That night, lying in bed alone, I thought about everything that had happened, about the choices I'd made, the justifications I'd used, the consequences I now faced. I still didn't think it was all my fault. Grant had his part to play too. He was distant. He didn't meet my emotional needs. He took me for granted. But I could admit, if only to myself in the dark, that I had made mistakes, that I had been selfish, impulsive, ungrateful for what I had. The realization didn't bring me peace. If anything, it made the loneliness sharper, more acute. I had thrown away a good man, a stable life, all for the illusion of something better. And now I had nothing. Sometimes I think about reaching out to Grant, to apologize properly this time, to take full responsibility for what I did, but I know it wouldn't change anything. The damage is done, the trust broken beyond repair. So I go on with my life, alone but not lonely. At least that's what I tell myself. I focus on my career, my friends, building a new life for myself. And sometimes, late at night when the silence is too loud, I wonder what might have been if I had appreciated what I had instead of chasing something I thought I deserved.